Freedom is a very interesting concept. I like to think of freedom as the ability to limit the manipulation of outside forces. So let's say freedom of distractions would be your ability to stay intentional even though the whirlwind, headwind, distractions are on your plate. They're coming to get you. We all have that vortex because when we generate work, naturally, work rises, it expands. As we grow the complexity of our client commitments, naturally, the limits to that growth also present constraints. So I'm often asked, how do I limit those distractions? What do I do? Well, the freedom isn't necessarily about changing all the things on the outside. Getting everything done, knocking off your to-do list. I mean, let's face it, if you assume you have to suck it up, you're going to sink yourself. That's not the idea. It's really about the domino effect. It's about focus. How you get access to your freedom is you get the freedom to choose. Now, let's understand that choices are different than decisions. Decisions are based on consequences, risks. But choices is a matter of selection, and the origin of your choices can come from your own values and aspirations, goals, dreams, longings, desires, urges. A choice is optional. A choice is not obligatory. Choice is an optional selection that you make. So how you choose can be based on what matters to you. And to me, this questions, what orientation are you operating in? Are you in a reactive and response orientation? Or are you in a creative orientation? What's the difference? When you're in a creative orientation, fundamentally, which means the underlying structure, the underlying place from which, the place of origin, to motivate that choice is based on something that matters. What matters to you isn't something you need to justify. If I choose to go to the baseball game on Sunday because it matters, there's no other reason to describe why. I want to be there. If I choose to create a relationship I love, it matters enough to me to create it. So the choice is the desire to make it a workable idea and then decide to act upon that choice to create it. But let's understand something. That process of desiring and deciding is not obligatory. It is free of outside circumstances. I'm not making decisions based on circumstances. I'm making decisions based on what matters. And that freedom is a choice in itself, is the choice to be a predominant creative force in my life. To choose to create or not create. That's the question. And that isn't stripped, that isn't taken away, because what matters to you is very personal. What matters to you is what matters to you. It needs no further justification. So to have your free will, to will something, is to want what you want because you want it. Not that you need that. So the choice is not born out of a discontentment or a problem that you need to eliminate. It's the freedom to choose, freedom to be discretionary. Now, I think there may be also a prerequisite freedom that is the freedom from wherever you are and the freedom to. Because in order for you to navigate movement and to get traction in progress in your pursuits, in your business, You're moving from a point and you're moving toward a point. So that would suggest two freedoms: getting free from a role, free from an activity, from a responsibility, from an arrangement, to create something different. So we might think of choice in terms of time. Being free from how I manage or spend time now, being free from what I spend time on later. One is fact, the other is fiction. One is current reality, the other is vision. See, what you think about it, what you believe about it, is not relevant. That does not infringe on your freedom to choose. Your opinion of yourself, whether you think you are X or Y, good or bad, inadequate or adequate, whatever that is, does not infringe on your freedom to make this change, to create what you want. It's almost so simple it's hard. The freedom from is probably organized by knowing what we want to go toward. So if I know where I want to spend my time, the conditions in which I want to create, conditions I desire, my relationship, the way I want to be living in my life, the way I want to create my time spent at the business, the way I want to delight my clients, the client experience I want to create, those are all pieces of subject matter. Those probably organize what I'm spending my time on now. And you may find that as you look at the way you spend your time now and reflect, there are many activities that you probably aren't the best at doing and you aren't the most energized by doing. And therefore, it gives you a sort of knowing a baseline. It gives you a place to start in looking at there are things you do that are not strategic. They're not your best use of energy, strengths, and time to value. And those activities we might call incompetent or even competent. You're okay at them, or maybe they inspire dread. But actually taking stock, actually taking inventory might cause you to get free from these things by choosing how you're going to either eliminate, how you're going to delegate, or automate these moments, these activities. And if we make these decisions, then we can multiply time later. It's addition by subtraction. Freedom from is the choice to eliminate, delegate, automate, and of course, you would either ignore something, you would have someone else more suited to do it, or you would invest. And by doing so, you would free yourself from this, assuming the right person is there with the right ability and your ability to communicate effectively and show them what the best case scenario would look like. And of course, develop them to a place where you can depend on them to carry it out. If it's automated, you find a system. If it's eliminated, you get rid of the guilt. But by doing so, you're making space. Now, time is like a vacuum, and so anything will rush to fill it. People do what they do unless they have something more compelling to do. So you must have a place to go, this freedom of choice, choosing a place to go with your time to really unearth and also get a grasp on the best course of action to take this inbox analysis, look at this, what's on your plate, take a fearless inventory, and start to create a line of sight path out of where you are, freedom from, and freedom to what you want to do with your time and who you want to be getting in front of, what you want to be doing. It's a desired state. It's a current state. And what I found is that the more that you offload these things, the more you fire yourself. It's a shift of identity because you're no longer defining your moral worth by what it is that you do. You're no longer clinging to what you do because you feel you're the best to do it or you're the only one to do it, or if you do it, you'll be really good. You'll be able to live up to your expectations. So one of the ways to get internally free is to get rid of all of your ideals. We often have ideals of ourselves of what we need to live up to. So I should be smart. I should be this. I should be that. And if you really look at it and you hear should in your language, I ought to, I should, I would, I could, place these standards on yourself. And even if you created something different, if you still compared yourself to those ideals, you'd probably feel like a failure. So the point is, you can rid yourself of those ideals. Recognize the difference between an ideal that's motivating you and an outcome. A desired outcome is an outcome you want for the sake of the outcome. I want to create, let's say, a highly successful consulting business that people love coming to work and does extraordinary work and great service, high value for its clients, and so forth. And I choose to create it because I love it enough to bring it into being. That's a freedom of choice. I'm in the creative orientation rather than removing or reacting to circumstances. So the compelling urge to create that is from the inside out. But in order to free myself up and move through the obstacles to get there, I have to look at how I'm positioned now. So these decisions that I'm making about what to rid, what to keep, what to improve, what to start, what to stop, is like KISS. I'm going to keep it, improve it, start it, stop it. And as I'm positioned, I'm able to make those decisions in service to creating an alternative future, that desired state. Now, what's really interesting is you may not feel the rewards, the fulfillment of these decisions right away. And oftentimes, that leads to a level of despair, frustration, emotional tension. And the point is, when we make these different creations, when we create something different, the place in the process that we've gotten to hasn't reached a point of enthusiasm to motivate us further. So we wonder when it's missing whether we're doing the right thing. And this leads to maybe compromising our vision. We give up. So we don't develop the tolerance, the intestinal fortitude to go the distance. And this creates mediocrity. Because we set out for something, things get difficult, and because we don't manage the tension, the setbacks, the frustration, the things that work, the things that don't, we don't treat those as equal value, and so therefore we pack up, we go home, and we settle. So if you organize what you want around what's difficult or what's easy, that's not the freedom to choose, because it would limit you like a thermostat to whatever that set point would be. You would only create up to your fortitude or create what's realistic and attainable. When someone says, I want to build attainable and reasonable goals, what's going on there is we're trying to avoid discouragement. So rather than shoot for an impractical or impossible goal, we'd rather shoot lower and just repeat what we already know. But at best, all we're going to do is just try harder. But when we shoot higher, we realize that we have to come at things a completely different way. We can't just do it better or harder. We have to actually do it smarter. We have to really change up our game in a way that we're going to need to operate at a completely different level, different model, different level of thinking to create the alternative. Let's be clear. This talk about creative freedom, about creating things and seeing what we have now and freeing ourselves up and having addition by subtraction, we have to understand that this is not self-improvement. Because the moment we start moving on to creating a different self, working on ourself, this would suggest that something is wrong with us. And the more that we focus on ourselves, the lousier creators we become. This is not about working on you. This is not about living up to those expectations. This is not about your ideals. Get rid of them. This isn't about figuring out who you are. This isn't about having a purpose. This isn't about setting a commitment so that you can force yourself into, applying yourself into the outcome because you don't trust you. You don't need to be committing to anything. Look, if you love it enough and you care it enough to be bringing it into being, you will do it because you love it. You create something out of love, that's the power. The power, as Picasso would say, is in the painting. It's not in oneself. It's in the outcome. It's what it does to you. It's not what it is. So when Kennedy said, let's put a man on the moon, it wasn't because it was practical. It actually unearthed all the obstacles, which is what they were able to plan with. They started from where they were. They set plans. They looked at what they needed to keep doing, improve upon, start, stop. And I'm sure a lot of decisions went around forming teams, delegating responsibility, automating certain things to get there. In the human engine, the human improvisation, the creative process went into full throttle to create and put a man on the moon. We did. We figured it out. The way through how was yes. The yes was the creative freedom to choose an alternative future because it mattered. The how was motivated by that choice. So the things we set out to create, we do not know how to do. We start separate from what we know. But that's really the true freedom, is the freedom to choose. Not by our conceptual set points, not by what we think is possible. That's the past. But by choosing out of desire. The freedom to want what we want and choose what we want and bring it into being as such is a learning process. Is there any other better way to learn? So I associate learning with freedom. Learning how to create something that we desire is the freedom to be involved in our lives and the freedom to look upon what we currently have and use current reality as a teacher. Current reality is good, it's bad, it's ugly, it comes in all shapes and colors. We cannot change what we have, what's given to us. We can be receptive or not. We can learn or we can refute, which is another freedom. It's the freedom to pay attention, the freedom to show up, the freedom to choose to be present, the freedom to attend to whatever arises. I choose to be here. I choose to show up. I choose to pay attention to this moment. I choose to be true to myself. That's a freedom we have, and a freedom to choose. I choose to see where I am in relationship to what I want to create. I choose to put a path together and learn by doing it, building capacity based on my actions. So the freedom is the freedom to choose the subject matter. I'm using this in reference to choosing time now, time then, but we can choose in any subject matter. The relationships now, the relationships then, the money earned now, the money saved now, the money earned and saved then. Those things. To want what you want and to choose it, to decide to create it or not decide. That is the question. We have infinite freedom when we set this up. And we find that with clients, with coach clients, that when they set up their teams, they bring up their financial ability and prosperity, and they invest in their health. These things help them rely on themselves, rely on these structures and systems to create what they want to create because they're serious about what they're seeking. And in order to do that, they have to be able to have the freedom consistently, infinitely, to get into things and get out of things. The maneuverability is important. The admission that they take in what comes in on their task list. The accumulation that they have to manage in order for them to stay in a certain flow and focus their attention without overwhelming themselves. See, because freedom is, I think, at the ultimate level, it's about simplicity. And simplicity is directly proportionate to our hierarchy of importance. The most important thing is knowing the most important thing. If everything mattered the same, then you wouldn't have the maneuverability and the freedom. You'd be under a rock or under a mountain of stuff because everything would mean the same. And the heart of the matter is, it does not. You have priorities. There are certain things in your life plan right now that are more indispensable than they are important than pure thrills. You have different levels of importance that you assign to things, and certain things have different significance in the future versus now. So the path of making these decisions is knowing from the inside out what really does matter as the origin, the primordial place from which you organize your choices. Choices means selecting where you put your attention. Decision is what you decide to complete. Yes, you desire, choose, then decide. And you choose a workable idea. It's not a concept. You choose to create it because you do. There's no rights to that. It's just a choice because it matters. That is the freedom. It's simple in the sense that you know your hierarchy of importance. You've organized your mind in such a way where you can navigate what's high, medium, and low in terms of priority, and then you manage yourself accordingly. Your choices are organizing your actions. Alignment. What I desire is what I decide. What I decide is where I spend my time. What I spend my time on is echoing my true priorities. Thank you.